So David, like one of the big things that we talk about on here and what we try to do is build a connection.
Yeah.
So I'd love to kind of hear your story. How did you end up in landscape architecture? What was the driving force? What brought you to who you are today?
Okay. Well, so when I was in high school, well, ironically, I wanted to be an architect, and actually, I had a couple things that I was interested in: architecture and economics. And why those two things, I have no idea. But even today, I'm really fascinated by the field of economics. And so I was going to I was lived in a small town in Central California, and I I had a counselor. Her name was Mrs. Weed. Um, she Not looking back at it, she was really a great counselor. But I remember at the time really not really liking her very much. And she was my high school counselor, but she was, I'd go in there and she'd ask me what I want to do with myself and stuff like that. And I remember telling her, well, I'm kind of thinking, maybe economics or architecture. I'm not really sure yet, but I like those two professions. And she was really practical. She was like a really practical woman. And she looked at my grade point average, which, is not all that, wasn't really great. I was more interested in, surfing and skateboarding and mountain climbing and all that kind of stuff than I was in school, which was really tough for me because I was kind of an introverted kid, right? And so I didn't have a really good grade point average. I had a lot of absences because I was, like I'd take off school for the day and go surfing or whatever, when the surf was good. And so she looked at that and she said, well, oh, and by the way, this is in 1987, 86, 87. And there was this thing back then that probably nobody on this listening to this call would remember, but it was called affirmative action. And it was a federal mandate that said that that colleges had to give preference to minority applications. So if you're a minority kid, then you had priority bridge or over somebody that was non-minority. And so Mrs. Weed told me, she said that, okay, your grade point average isn't that good. And, I'm going to be honest with you, David, you're a white kid. You probably are not going to get into college. And I remember being really upset about that, thinking, gosh darn it, that's just, I don't understand that, and I was a little upset. But she was absolutely right looking back in retrospect, and it was good advice because I ended up going on to a community college, and I took this class called Introduction to Landscape Architecture because I was kind of like, well, it's architecture. It has
Oh, looks like we got a little pause on David end. There we go.
I started applying to Cal Poly, started thinking about going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and fortunately I got in, and the rest is history. I'm now a landscape architect. I've got a degree in
That's
I've got a degree in at the time it was a bachelor's of science in landscape architecture. I graduated from Cal Poly in 1992. Ended up getting licensed in about 1994 and moved down to San Diego at the time with my fiance, now my wife, Catherine, and have been practicing as a landscape architect here in San Diego since 1995.
and what an amazing place to get a degree, especially in landscape architecture. How can you describe a more beautiful place than San Luis Obispo?
It's a great little town. It's a beautiful community. It's a little bit like an island. So, sort of in the middle of the state, there's not a lot going on around it, but it does allow you to sort of focus on your education, which is really good. So,
And being out in nature, which is
absolutely.
which is a great thing for someone in your profession, to say the least.
Yeah, and I remember my last year there. Me and another guy rented a small house right, like literally almost on the beach in a little town called Cayucas. And I would every morning I'd run down and uh, you know jump in the water and go surfing for about an hour before school, and then I'd go to school, and then if I had time at the end of the day, I'd come home and surf again. And so I really can't complain. It was great. No complaints.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So, kind of falling into landscape architecture and it was all kind of something that just formed itself together. When you were in school, was there something that really kind of projected you forward that kind of kept your interest and inspired you to keep pushing on with this?
I was just an incredibly driven young guy. I think that I'm the kind of person that sort of just when I set my mind on something, I almost become fixated and maybe a little obsessed with it. And so that sort of describes my a little bit of OCD, I think. But yeah, I just I sort of fixated on just getting this degree and becoming licensed, getting out of school, and practicing landscape architecture. And I mean, there's just no way that there's anything that was going to stop me or dissuade me from doing that. Um, I I had some really great professors. Um, you know, Ironically, I think some of the best education I personally got was in at community college. I know that sounds kind of funny, but I went to Ventura College, which is a little town north of Los Angeles, kind of out on the coast, and had some really cool, just super liberal professors that I just got me really excited about education and learning. And so what started out, like I said, in high school, I didn't have a really good GPA. I wasn't really interested. I was really introverted. I didn't enjoy my education. When I got to Ventura College, I really got into it, and so incidentally, I went from like an average student to like I graduated both from Ventura College and Cal Poly with honors, and the, so like I was just really into it. I loved what I was studying. I loved just learning,
Yeah.
and just like gaining.
So then after you graduated from university, what where did you go after Cal Poly? Did you start in an office or?
Yeah, so I graduated in 1992. There was a recession happening at the time.
Oh, you're breaking up here. We're going in slow mo. Hold up. I think you're kind of having a bad connection right now.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, we can hear you a lot better now.
Okay, I think I'm was just kind of going through a bad spot
Oh,
there. Um, anyways, uh, the question was, oh yeah, so I graduated. There wasn't a lot of work. I was able to get a job working for a landscape architecture firm, tagging oak trees and wandering around the hills of Santa Monica, the Santa Monica Mountains, tagging oak trees in the wilderness, which was an experience for me. So
that's a
that's kind of how it started.
and then when excuse me if I sorry I had to dodge a call there. Uh,
Nope.
uh, so then you worked. If you could just kind of re-say that again, because I might have missed that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so I just said that there wasn't a lot of work in 1992, but I was
Hmm.
able to get a job working for a company, a landscape architecture firm that tagged oak trees in the Santa Monica Mountains.
Okay.
So I ended up spending, the next couple of years basically climbing around the Santa Monica Mountains,
Wow.
tagging oak trees.
What an amazing experience.
Hey, and you know what? You know it's generally at the bottom of an oak tree? Maybe you know this, but what's the most common plant at the bottom of an oak tree? You have any idea?
No clue.
Poison oak. Poison oak is the most common plant at the bottom of an oak tree, at least in the Santa Monica Mountains. So, and so there was a lot of rattlesnakes and poison oak, and so that was, quite the adventure.
Yeah, and then after working and taking trees and dodging poison oak and rattlesnakes, how did your firm that you run now, how did that start?
Well, I had been down here in San Diego for about 5 years working for a small firm down here. They had a bigger office up in Orange County, but I was working for a firm called Ivy Landscape Architects, and then just decided that I felt like it was time to kind of try to do it on my own. And fortunately, my wife was in support of that, even though she was pregnant and we had just bought a house. So probably in retrospect, thinking about it probably was not a very good idea. But we went for it, and that was back in 1999. We've been running a business ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you started out, was it just you, or did you have a partner that you were starting it with?
It was just me for the first couple of years, and then my wife, who was working as she'd worked for several years for Westfield, believe it or not. Well, first it was Trizecon, but then for Westfield as it was a tourism director, assistant marketing director for Horton Plaza,
Hmm.
and then she got hired on as the marketing director for UTC. So she had background in marketing, and we had a small child at the time, our son William, and I think she was pregnant again with my daughter Molly, and so we decided, again, not very good planning or not very smart, realistically, and frankly, looking back in retrospect, a really really bad idea. She quit her job and went to work with me as kind of doing the business development end of the business.
So really, really a firm that thrives on some pressure. I couldn't tell.
we you know that's the thing. I think that's the thing about running a business. I mean, you really need to be prepared for just about anything. So starting out in a condition like that, I think sort of helped to prepare me a little bit for what it was all about. And fortunately, it's become much easier. Catherine is incredibly good at what she does. uh,
Hmm.
she's way better at what she does than I am at what I do. But she's the business development director, so uh, it works out really nicely.
Yeah, I've had the chance of working with you and your whole team, and it's always been really a pleasure. I mean, not only our friendship, but working with you guys has always been really, really quite nice. And it's always been, you can tell that she's really good at organizing things because that side and especially your landscape side as well, it's always on point and it's always very professional and you can tell that all those areas are well taken care of.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate that. Catherine and I are very different people, but because of that, we kind of complement each other, and I think that's why it works.
Hmm. And now you guys have what, eight, nine, 10 people working for you.
Yeah, well, including Catherine and I, there's 11 of us,
Wow.
um, and actually 12. Come to think of it, we just brought somebody in. Actually, brought somebody back. Ben Arcia, who worked with us for many years early on, and then took a year and a half sabbatical traveling around South America, and he's now back.
That
So
that's a great
um,
experience,
yeah,
and that's great as a leader. I mean, he obviously must have made a large impact, but also for you to run your company, run your firm, and to welcome something like that. I know personally that you were very open for him and very encouraging, and that's a pretty amazing thing nowadays to see, to say like, hey, you wanna take off for a year and a half? That sounds great. I can't wait to talk to you when you get back. And I know you guys kept very close during that whole period of him traveling.
yeah. Well, the thing is about Ben, and you know Ben. I mean, he's just he's more than a valuable, a colleague. I think he's he's incredibly smart. He's very articulate. He does what he does very well, and he takes a lot of pride in it. So it just made sense. We love having him around.
Yeah, and you're great friends, and that's an important thing in any kind of business.
Absolutely.
And now, how would you describe the main the main type of work that you guys do? I mean, obviously landscape architecture, but are you guys doing a lot on the residential side? I know you guys do a lot on the commercial side.
Yeah, I would say we are primarily an urban landscape architecture firm. I would say, a good 90% of the work that we do is urban, a lot of stuff downtown. Uh, I mean, literally working on, at least for a while there, some of them kind of gone on into a temporary sort of holding pattern, but I mean, literally probably half a dozen towers downtown San Diego. We are we do a lot of urban infill. We do a lot of education work, healthcare. We do a lot of work for biotech companies, campuses, and then some custom residential as well. But it's mostly, like I said, it's mostly all urban type of work,
Yeah, and
and
it's
that's kind of by design. I feel that there's it's much more rewarding for me to work on things that are urban as opposed to sort of things out in our suburban neighborhoods where I know there's a great need, but um, to me, I just it's there's so much opportunity to make um, the our current urban environment so much better, and that's kind of what makes me excited.
yeah, and it definitely shows in the projects that make good projects great projects, and it usually is really kind of brought in a fresh breath of air, especially as you know, as I've worked on projects for months and months on time, and things change so little, and then we get back your plan for the design of the landscape, and it's kind of a very like refreshing fresh breath of air, and new excitement into a lot of the projects.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate that. We take a lot of, I mean, we take everything we do very serious. We're incredibly passionate about what we do, and and I think everybody that's in the built environment profession should, and I think most do.
Hmm.
It is important, and I know you do too. You're likewise one of those people that really takes a lot of pride in what you do, and so it's important to work with people that share sort of similar visions and inspiration and passion for the built environment.
Yeah. So moving forward, and kind of getting to the end of this, I know we've talked already on the idea of workspaces, and how COVID has kind of changed the idea of what we see as changing in architecture. Um, do you have any more thoughts on changes, or is it kind of something that we need to see through and then react?
Well, I just hope, honestly, that this really impacts the world that we live in a positive way. As I mentioned earlier, I see less traffic. We were out in the desert, and for the first time in my life, the skies were just so blue. And ordinarily it's a little, you get this little bit of a brown haze that did not exist. And you can travel, you can go from point A to point B without just ridiculous amounts of traffic. And I just don't, I have to believe that that's not necessary, and that we all, uh, we, we take our business life way too seriously. I think it's important to do what we do to the best of our ability, but I also think that we all need to sort of take a step back and and just be sort of have a better appreciation for what we have, and maybe just a little bit more content, with
Hmm.
the world that we live in. So with that, I really hope that things kind of, as this whole thing improves, as far as this whole pandemic is concerned, I do hope that we reflect, and that the good parts of what we're seeing today are somehow able to continue, because there's a lot of great things happening, I think.
I love that message, David. This is a great way to end it. If you have anything else that you'd like to kind of close on, and if you could just share with everybody a way that they can get a hold of you if they'd ever like to, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I absolutely. My email address is david@mlasd.com, or honestly, you can call me directly